Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Elam Road podcast, where on today's show, we're going to be previewing Brentford's trip to the Emirates on Saturday to face Arsenal. I'm delighted to say that Elliot from the Arsenal Vision podcast joins me for the preview. Elliot, thank you so much for taking the time. How you doing?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm doing all right after a 3-0 win over Real Madrid in the Champions League. So, yeah, it's doing pretty good.
I can imagine, mate. We're going to talk about it. I think that's the only natural place to start. But just before we do start, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the Arsenal game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels and follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. As I just mentioned, Elliot, I feel like there is only really one place to start. We're recording this Thursday evening. So I guess my first question is, have you come down from Tuesday night?
No, man, I'm floating. It's an unbelievable experience. And look, I understand it's only job half done. And I think Mikel Arteta has done a nice job of making sure that we stay focused on that. But if we're being honest, Arsenal's performance in the Champions League over the years has been substandard. We're obviously out of the Champions League for several years, but I think our European CV is incomplete. And this is the trophy that I think is most missing from a club of our status. So, you don't want to start dreaming too far ahead yet, and there's still work to be done, but an incredible night. And definitely one that I think has galvanized a fan base that otherwise was starting to feel a little worn out with this season through refereeing incidents and injuries and not quite achieving what we hoped in the league. It's definitely given us a boost.
Watching the game on Tuesday night, Elliot, I really wasn't sure what kind of performance from Arsenal we were going to get, but it struck me as a night where every single Arsenal player, they had close to the game of their season. But what I want to know from your perspective is who stood out, because Brentford fans will obviously want to know about David Raya, and I thought he was fucking brilliant on Tuesday night. I thought he was so good. But obviously, like, talk me through who really stood out for you as an Arsenal fan.
Well, I mean, the easy thing would be to say Declan Rice, and that's probably the correct answer. But I think I want to go a slightly different direction. I think Miles Lewis-Skelly, to be 18 years old, playing in a game of that magnitude with that much pressure. And this isn't just go play left back, run up and down the touchline and do your best to keep Rodrigo quiet. This is step into midfield, not a little bit, all the way, invert all the way to the center of the pitch, stand next to Thomas Partey, play in a pivot, progress the ball. He makes the goal for Mikel Merino with a double nutmeg and an assist. He was really essential, I think, not only to the way we defended in the game in transition, but critically to our ball progression. He is not one of these young players that just says, I'm not going to be the guy who doesn't make the mistake. And he says, I'm going to be someone who contributes to us getting the ball going in the right direction. And so for me, he stands out because not just because of his age, but because of the performance he had and the performance he had under the circumstances.
And I completely agree. I think he's like only 18, 19 games into his senior career.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously he's only 18 years old anyway. But obviously this is a Brentford podcast, so and maybe not so much on Tuesday night, but Brentford fans will definitely be keen to hear about your thoughts on David Raya, because obviously that game came off the back of the Everton game and the penalty incident, and him getting kind of memed a little bit for diving a little bit too early. And Brentford fans will know I don't think he ever saved a penalty for Brentford. He obviously has done for Arsenal, but just
this
on
season
David Raya
against Atalanta in the Champions League. Yep,
exactly. But just on David Raya in particular, how have you found his evolution as a player since joining Arsenal?
Well, first of all, I think knowing that the job is his and Aaron Ramsdale not being there has just helped him go from strength to strength. I think he's been brilliant for us, but I think he arrived with some nerves and some inconsistency and some errors, probably associated with the fact that he was replacing a very popular figure at the club. He's gone on to prove that he is the much better goalkeeper, but I don't think it's just the way he keeps shots out, which is obviously important. I think it is the importance of his ball playing. He is an outfield player for Arsenal, essentially. We build up in that 2-3 shape, and sometimes it's a 3-2, 2-3, but he's right there as an option for Saliba to go back to, or Gabriel, in this case, Kivior. If you look at the build-up to Merino's goal, it's a long sequence of Arsenal possession, but maybe one of the most interesting and important passes in that sequence is it goes back to Raya, and he's sort of being pressed, and Partey makes an intelligent move into space around sort of three Madrid players. And it's a pass sort of on the slant, on the angle in the midfield that Raya plays between two Madrid players that sets Party away, that sets the move away and gets us the goal. There's another moment later where Kivior has a bit of a loose touch and gives it back to Raya, I would say under pressure, and most keepers, I think, would just slash it out for a throw in. He whips it up the left-hand side accurately to Leo Trossard and starts a counterattack. I also think, even though Courtois was brilliant in this game and he stood out as a star, you also see David Raya's importance just claiming crosses and commanding his area, which is essential. He gets when to get us going and when to slow it down. So for me, yeah, sure, he dives too early for penalties. Like, it's a weird thing. He's going to get memed for it. I don't know if that's Inaki Kana's input, by the way, because we have a sort of idiosyncratic goalkeeping coach who's a big personality at the club. But I'm thrilled with him. I'm thrilled with him because he enables our game model, and that's more important than what he does on a penalty.
For sure, I couldn't agree more. I think his kind of slow start or his inconsistent start and some of the mistakes. I think Brentford fans were kind of we were all wanting him to succeed because he didn't leave the club in any kind of bad vein or anything. But we were saying just wait, because when you look at his distribution, when you look at his cross collection, I'm glad you mentioned it because it's such an important aspect of his game. The way he commands his box sets him apart from a lot of goalkeepers in the world, not just even in the Prem. But I'm really glad that he's starting to kind of become the goalkeeper that we knew that he would become at Arsenal.
I'll add one thing. I think watching Aaron Ramsdale from afar a bit and seeing how Raya's played for us, I think he's really grown in the hearts of Arsenal supporters as they've come to realize, like, hey, we liked Ramsdale, the guy, but we weren't going to get where we need to go with him. And that's sort of been borne out, I think, as you watch some uneven performances for Southampton. Now, look, they're a train wreck and it's not Ramsdale's fault per se, but I think it's allowed Arsenal supporters who were confused by that move to really come around to it. So yeah, he's definitely a big part of our success.
You mentioned the supporters there, and just on the Emirates itself, and I kind of just want to park the kind of Real Madrid conversation and kind of get into the league chat after this. But I was reading an article from James McNicholas in The Athletic, and he was talking about how that performance and kind of since Arteta arrived at Arsenal, he's turned the Emirates into something else. It feels different, even when you're watching it on TV. Even when we've been there, as Brentford going there, it's not really a big game, but you can feel there's a change. It doesn't seem like the Emirates of old under previous managers. Is that something that you guys can see? Is that tangible?
I mean, it's tangible against Real Madrid, of course, but here's what I would say. Last season, and even the season before, when our performance was really a surprise, when we were on a 100-point pace until Saliba and Tomiyasu got injured and Rob Holding came in and we kind of fell apart. Last season, there was this thing where if we conceded, the crowd roared even louder. There has been a real bond between Mikel and the fans, and that's in part because also this run we've been on has included Haaland hero and Bukayo Saka. Now you have other Haalanders coming through. But this season's been a bit different, Mike. I don't think the good feeling has been universal this season at the Emirates. And I've gone to quite a few games there myself. There was more expectation this season. This wasn't plucky underdog Arsenal. This was an Arsenal that was tipped by a lot of people to go win the league. And I have my own explanations for why that hasn't been possible for us this season. And I don't think it's a Mikel Arteta issue, but there's been frustration at times. When the ball moves laterally, when there's a horseshoe shape to our buildup, when we play slow, some of the groans have come back, some of the frustration. And I think, frankly, that's just the reality of being a big club with big expectations that isn't the plucky underdog anymore. You have to, the expression, you have to earn the right to play. I think sometimes at big clubs, you have to earn the supporters' enthusiasm by delighting them with a big tackle or a great pass or a nice move. So I think James is spot on from last season, but this season it's been more mixed. Not back to the bad old days, but more mixed.
You mentioned the explanations as to why perhaps the Premier League season, at least, hasn't gone or hasn't reached the expectations pre-season. And I want to talk about, obviously, the Saka injury is big. The noise from the outside around, no natural number 9 is big. Odegaard's form is also big. Is there one key factor for you, or is it a culmination of a lot of things?
Well, the first thing I would say is look at all the teams that are going through injury crises this season. There's a lot of them. There was a summer tournament. There's too many fixtures. We all know everybody's going on and on. Is there too much football now? There's a Club World Cup this summer. Thankfully, we're not a part of that. But there's a lot of clubs facing injury crises. Where are they? Where are the clubs? I mean, Manchester City, for all their resources, and they reinforced in January. They lost Rodri. and they fell completely to pieces. They've lost some other players as well. Manchester United are a mess. Tottenham Hotspur are quite hilariously a mess. Chelsea have had some injuries. They're not playing particularly well vis-a-vis the spend that they've had. And yet here we are in second and halfway through potentially knocking out Real Madrid from the Champions League. And there's this attitude like we've underperformed despite Martin Odegaard, our player of the season last season, missing 3 months. As you mentioned, Bukayo Saka missing 4 months. Kai Havertz, who really has blossomed into an effective striker for us, missing 5 months. Now we're without Gabriel Magalhaes, the man who Mikel Arteta called our best defender for the last several months, out for the season. Gabriel Jesus, who could have been the backup to Kai Havertz, out for the season, right? So we're playing a midfielder at striker. Martinelli missed 2 months. Now, this can sound like excuses. I get it. And nobody even wants to hear about Tomiyasu, who's been perpetually injured. And there's others like Gohan Calafiori, our summer signing, injured. Mikel Merino arrives at the club with big expectations, and he's proving what he can do now. Missed the first 2 months, getting injured in training right before the season starts. So those sound like excuses, but I would ask you a simple thought experiment. If Mohamed Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk missed 3 months of this season, where do you think Liverpool are on the table? We all know they're not in the same place. And yet there's somehow an expectation that despite us doing essentially that, losing Kai, losing Odegaard, losing Saka, that we should be right there on a 90-point pace with Liverpool, where there would be no expectation of them doing that if they had the same injuries as us. And none of the other clubs that have experienced injury crises are doing that. So yes, there two things can be true, Mike, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little heated about this because it's obviously a big talking point in Arsenal circles, but
of course, yeah,
it can be true that we did not sufficiently and properly address areas of obvious need in the market, striker and winger. The Sterling loan, I thought it was maybe a stroke of genius. I mean, it's not like he's 35. He's 29 when the season started. He had nothing left to give. So that didn't help. But yes, it is true that we did not strengthen in the areas we should have. But I think also true that despite that, these injuries, more than anything else, have cratered our ability to keep a 90-point pace for the season. And I think that's totally understandable, honestly.
I agree. On the back of that, though, you mentioned, and there has been like the whole Arsenal number 9. They need an out and out goal scorer. It's like it's almost like it's such a weird conversation because it's literally been around for so long. It's what everyone has been talking about. So on the back of that, what do Arsenal for you need to do to make that final step? If you're saying, you can't kind of contend with the injuries, what do you guys need to do to make that final step? And by final step, I mean win the Prem.
Yeah. So first of all, we came within 2 points of doing it last season. 89 points is the second most points in the history of our club. We had our most goal difference in the history of our club, and we broke our goal scoring record last season. So the perception that we're like, a low scoring, boring team, can't break teams down. We broke our goal scoring record and goal difference record last season. And the only Arsenal team to ever finish with more points is the Invincibles, right? And oh, by the way, the Invincibles would have lost the title last season to Manchester City by a point. So I think we got a little unlucky in the sense that we ran up against a Manchester City that had one more big monster season, right? I only reference that because I think the perception is somehow that we're further away than I think we are. At full strength, I still think we can go toe-to-toe with any of the teams that will be contending for the title next season. And to me, City still look like they're in rebuild mode. I don't think any of the other big clubs look particularly well-constructed right now. So it's Liverpool. And Liverpool are going to try to squeeze another season out of Salah and Van Dijk, and they're going to lose Trent. And I'm sure they'll spend, but it could be tricky for them. If you told me I could have 100% fit Arsenal next season, just promise me that. 38 games, nobody misses. Right there alone, before we do any business, I'd say we're going to be one of the big contenders for the title. But obviously, we must buy a striker, someone who is a proper number 9. When you look at the goal return Kai Havertz and Mikel Merino have, it's proof that anybody can score goals in this system if they're just in the right place. Now imagine someone who was really born to do it. I think we need another left wing because while I love Gabriel Martinelli and his form is rounding back into shape, I think the idea of what we thought he might have been a bit above where he is. So we need someone to compete with him at the highest level to replace Leo, who's going to probably age out Leo Trossard. And then we'll need another midfielder. I expect Thomas Partey will go. I expect Jorginho will go. It looks like we're very strongly linked with Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad. I have my questions about him, but he certainly looks like a good enough player to come in and fill that role. So I think if we get Zubimendi, if we get a striker, if we get a left wing, we're going to be a very, very formidable side. I mean, if you can beat Real Madrid 3-0 with Mikel Merino at center forward, what could you do, with a proper striker in full fitness?
I think as well, and there is a parallel with Brentford here as well, because we had a similar injury crisis last season. Obviously, we had Ivan Toney out from the ban, which
Yeah.
isn't an injury, but we all went into this season and we were thinking this amount of injuries can't happen again. And retrospectively, it was probably a little bit naive to think that that can't happen again. With the amount of games you mentioned, the football calendar is so congested at the moment. You know, we thought that this can't happen again, but it could. And I'm going to ask you something before we move on onto the game on Saturday. And Brentford fans they want me to ask you this: was Ivan Toney was he ever was he ever one that you thought I want to go for him? I want him to be the guy.
He divided opinion.
Yeah,
I would have gone for him for sure. 100%. Because I think, first of all, and at least if you looked at how we played last season, maybe a little bit less this season for obvious reasons, we launched the ball. Raya is great at that distribution. He'd be very comfortable hitting the ball to Ivan Toney.
Oh, yeah.
I think a player who could knock it down for Martinelli and Saka to run onto, who occupies center back. So teams cannot say, we're just going to double up on Saka and Martinelli. The other thing is, Mike, if you want to say anything about Mikel Arteta, you got to say this. He's been brilliant at getting us to play well against the best teams. I think we got the best record against the top 6 sides over the last 3 seasons, right? You look at what we did against Madrid. We put 5 past City this season. We put 7 past PSV. We put 5 past Sporting. We've done the double over Spurs a couple of seasons in a row. We embarrassed Chelsea 5-0 last season at the Emirates. Like, he's really gotten us to stop being a team that goes into those big games and underperforms. If anything, our problem is, what do we do against low blocks? What do we do against teams that can really get into a compact 4-4-2 off the ball and make it difficult for us? That's where I think a battering ram, a guy you can cross to. I mean, Saka's delivery, Odegaard's delivery. And then you start to think about corners like Declan Rice's corner delivery. And Ivan Toney is the kind of tall forward that I think Arsenal's system needs, not for days like Real Madrid, but for days like Everton away.
Saturday, potentially, when we set up in that low block.
Brentford,
yep. Like Saturday. Honestly, I made a video about it recently, and I had Arsenal fans in the comments saying, we're in 2025 and people are still talking about Ivan Toney to Arsenal links. And I thought at the time, and I know it would have been a little bit of a gamble because he was coming back from the betting ban, but I thought at the time, he's fit for all the reasons you've just said. The fact that he'd be able to bring Martinelli into play, Saka into play, give you a different dimension. The fact that he's just a stone cold killer in the box. He scored 20 goals for Brentford. So there's a guarantee of goals there. And did you read the reports about potentially them having a meeting and they didn't agree on something? Yeah. So maybe that's a decisive factor. But I just thought in my head, even if that is a decisive factor, you take the risk. No, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Well, so what I would say is, and you probably have heard all this, and some of this is just talk, but some of this is real. Mikel Arteta has it all non-negotiables thing. We suffer together, how we live, all the way he talks. Everyone will know quite publicly what we went through with Mesut Ozil, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, maybe less publicly, Matteo Guendouzi, who's a very nice young player that we essentially ran out of the club at a discount because he didn't have the right head on his shoulders. You just don't hear any griping out of the Arsenal camp. It is a very together group. It's a very positive environment. And the thing you notice, like when you play Real Madrid, Vinny and Mbappe just don't press. Mm-hmm. And when your front two don't press, you're going to get killed by teams that want to play out from the back. When they don't chase, when they don't harry. Everyone at Arsenal is willing to suffer together and do the job. You've heard the expression, probably, maybe, I don't know if this travels outside Arsenal circles, that Arsenal might be the best out of possession team in the world.
Of course, yeah.
That takes intelligence, but it takes commitment and dedication. I'm not saying Ivan Toney wouldn't be committed or dedicated, but if there were doubts about, from a character standpoint or personality fit standpoint, Mikel's just never going to go for that, even if he's the right physical attributes for the team,
I agree, and I'm finished on this Ivan Toney section. But I just thought, because, and it's similar to how Mikel Arteta has been firm with people that perhaps don't buy into the culture. But Thomas Frank, we famously have the no dickheads policy at Brentford, which means that players of that ilk, potentially players like Aubameyang, they tend to not either come to the club, or signings have fallen apart because we've evaluated the personality and they don't fit in. So I really, really thought for a moment when the links started to happen, I really thought, if this happens, it's going to be a hit. So I don't know. We'll park that for now. What have you made, onto the game on Saturday, what have you made of Arsenal-Brentford matchups so far in the Prem?
Well, so obviously there's the famous one, right? Opening night a few seasons ago when Brentford had just been promoted and Neville and Carragher singing with the fans. It was a really unpleasant experience for Arsenal fans, and we did not enjoy that. I think Thomas Frank is a very talented manager. I think Brentford Play good football. I think running into some of the problems that you have, I think when you get promoted and you start to establish yourself as a Premier League regular, what are the goals? What are you trying to achieve? And you would know this better than I did. I would. What's the next step? Because the other thing that happens is teams start to figure out what you want to do and what you're about, and also pick off some of your best players, which is always a potential risk. I'm just so impressed by the way Brentford has recruited and reloaded and managed to stay, a very highly competitive team in the Premier League. And there are players there that I really admire. I mean, I really like Mbeumo. I
Hmm.
think he's a great player. I think Johan Wiss is a great player. And they're going to cause us problems for sure this weekend. But all in all, I guess I would simply say a very impressive side that has established itself as one of the better run, competent Premier League clubs. Although I'm not sure what the evolution is. What do you want the next step to be? And is it realistic? Is it to get into Europe? I mean, where are you trying to go now?
Well, it's something that we've been talking about all season long because Thomas Frank, at least this season, hasn't prioritized the cup competitions,
Mm,
which is probably like
frustrating.
Brentford
Yeah.
fans. Brentford fans adore Thomas Frank because he's the man that
Hmm.
brought us to the Prem, 70-year wait, and all of that kind of thing. He'll have a statue when he goes potentially, but the one thing that we kind of level at him as something that he should be doing better is seriously prioritizing cup competitions. I think you look at the semi-finalists of the FA Cup. You've got Palace, Forest, all these clubs that are obviously bigger clubs than Brentford, but they get the things that we remember as fans are those big days out. Obviously it's a lot more frequent for you guys being Arsenal, but for us, for even to get to a Wembley semi-final, that's something we'll remember for years and years and years.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right in terms of the evolution of Brentford in the Premier League. I feel like we've established ourselves now, and we have to be happy with us going into our fifth season in the Premier League. With the budget that we have, with the size of the club, we have to be so happy with that. But naturally, as fans, you kind of think, well, where's the next step? And it is Europe. I think that's what we're kind of building towards this summer. I feel like this season it might be a bit of a stretch. But in terms of the game on Saturday, Elliot,
Mm.
is it? We were chatting about it just before we started recording, but it's a bit weird now because obviously the focus is on the second leg for you guys. What do you expect a lot of changes for Saturday?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is really interesting because in general, Mikel Arteta has not been a manager who rotates. And that's been a source of frustration for some fans that feel you got to prioritize. And it may be a cause for some of the injuries. And so there are some people that would level that accusation at him. I'm more mixed on that. But what I would say is he showed, gosh, for the first time, really, I can remember, not the first time ever, but he rotated for Everton away with Real Madrid in mind. And that is not a thing I think Mikel Arteta would have done a season or two ago. And maybe, just maybe, we've been handed a little bit of a gift in a way, being out of the cups and out of the league title, but pretty safely ensconced in second, where he can just say, screw it. It's all in on the Champions League. And I expect him to continue to do that. Declan Rice came off against Real Madrid after about 70 minutes with a knock on his ankle. I think he's fine. Timber has been playing barely fit and coming off an ACL last season. The way he's played and the way we've used him up is incredible, but he'll need to be managed. And Ben White is available, so I imagine come in.
Mm-hmm.
Saka came off after a little over an hour, maybe 70-ish minutes, with a bit of a knock, but I think that was pre-planned probably. Thomas Partey didn't play at all against Everton. He was rested for the Madrid tie. So there's a lot of questions about who will start, and I think he's going to rotate massively. The issue is just with the number of injuries we have, who can even put out there? So I can give you a sense of what I think will happen if that's what you want to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Go on.
So up front, I think that's the easiest place to figure it out because the most likely outcome will be Ethan Nwaneri on the right. And I think you'll have a lot of fun watching Ethan because he is a special talent.
Mm-hmm.
Leo Trossard up front with Merino rested, potentially, and Raheem Sterling off the left. Now, to Sterling's credit, he started against Everton, and I think he looked brighter than he has. So, you can't just rule him out, but he hasn't been very good, let's be honest. Not a lot of size in that front three, not a focal point, but a lot of players that can win off the dribble, things like that. Then the midfield question. Will he play Declan Rice, who came off with a knock? I don't know that he will. He might actually play Mikel Merino in midfield. I think it's almost certain Jorginho will play instead of Thomas Partey. The one that I kind of have a question about is Martin Odegaard. He doesn't get a lot of rest. God knows he could probably use it. I'm not sure who we would play absent Odegaard. So I could see him playing, but I see a Merino, Jorginho, Odegaard midfield or something like that. And then the back four, that's where it gets complicated. I think it'll be Ben White off the right. I think he's got to start William Saliba. Like, I don't want him to, but I just don't know who else he has. Probably Kivior. And then I think Mazzucchelli will be rested, sort of be like a Zinchenko or a Tierney, something like that off the left. And Raya will start because we don't have a backup keeper functionally. Now, the interesting thing about that is if Ricardo Calafiori is fit again, and I don't know if we have an update on that as of time of recording, he becomes an option for center back or full back. But I think since we have Zinchenko and Tierney, maybe they'd give him some minutes at center back and then you could rest Saliba. So I don't know if he'll rotate that much, but that's my expectation of the rough estimate of the players that you might see out there.
In light of that, Elliot, in light of the changes that could be there on Saturday, how are you? And I know obviously the big focus for Arsenal, we've touched on it already, is now Champions League. Like, you could very well lose on Saturday. It probably won't happen, but you could, and you probably wouldn't give two shits as long as you go through against Real Madrid. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, take that trade.
But in light of the changes, obviously our season's not over, but it's pretty close to being over. If we didn't pick up 3 points, I'm pretty sure like Europe would be completely written off. But in light of the changes that could be made, what kind of game are you expecting on Saturday?
Well, so if you said what are my priorities for the game, right? I'd say priority 1, no injuries that matter. And everything else is priority 2. You know what I mean? But here's the thing, and this is why Mikel is special. It doesn't matter which 11 Arsenal players are out there. The shape will be spectacular, and we will be very hard to break down, and we will probably have most of the ball, and you will probably find yourself struggling to get out and to create. The difference is when you take a Gabriel Magalhaes and Saliba and Mazzucchelli and Jurrien Timber out, the one break you get or the couple counters you get, suddenly you find some joy as opposed to having all hope extinguished by those very talented individual defenders. So the kind of game I expect, unfortunately for Arsenal fans, is I expect to see you guys in a low block, us pushing you back, a lot of Arsenal possession, maybe not a lot of Arsenal incision, and some maybe low intensity attacking play where we find ourselves having to recover quickly to shut down Mbeumo or Wissa, on the counter. It wouldn't surprise me if you snagged a goal or two on the counter, but it also wouldn't surprise me if this was the dullest 0-0 you've ever seen, because we just are very good defensively. So I don't expect this will be a game the neutrals will want to tune into. Let's put it that way.
That's a great way to round up the podcast, Elliot.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, there are memes that go around about terrorismo ball from Arteta, and there's all kinds of memes about the filthiest low block you've ever seen. You're not going to get that. We're going to be attacking, but I just think because of the players we'll be missing, there'll be a lot of possession, a lot of attack, but not a lot of cutting edge. We could win it because we're a very good team, no matter who we put out there. And maybe he won't rotate as much as I think. I think where you'd run into trouble, Mike, is my guess. It will probably be that stale domination, right, for the first 60 minutes or so. But I do think he'll probably want to get 20 minutes into Saka and 20 minutes into Martinelli and 20 minutes into Merino. And so if it is 0-0, 60, 65 minutes into the game, then you could have the issue where the firepower comes out, and then we could win it late potentially.
Well, let's hope not, for our sake, Elliot. Let's hope not. But
I'll tell you what,
so much.
I'll root for you if you can get us past Madrid, maybe past Paris, and who knows, Munich. Book flights.
Well, I'm rooting for you guys in the Champions League anyway. But thank you so much for joining me. The Ealing Road podcast will be back after Arsenal with a full-time show. And just remember, before we go, drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the Arsenal game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Elliot, once again, thank you so much, mate. Good luck for the rest of the season, particularly in the Champions League, but not good luck for Saturday. Bad luck for Saturday.
Sounds good. Same to you.